Yo, BJ Gaddour with the Daily BJ, and I know a thing or two about hamstrings. They're fat, and they don't travel easily, nor do they come through customs, but I know how to train them very well. And my favorite exercise, if I had to pick one to build the hamstrings, is the hip extension leg curl progression. This is a deep dive, so I'm going to spend 15 minutes showing all the progressions, all the options, my favorite training tools to employ this movement pattern. If you don't like long, instructive videos, check me out on Instagram at BJ Gaddour, but this is a deep dive so you can really learn how to employ this movement. Now, function of the hamstrings, it both flexes the knee and extends the hip. This is a little dance move too, all right? So the beauty of this exercise, you can actually train both functions of the hamstrings simultaneously to build both the low and high hamstrings. Also, simultaneous hip extension and knee flexion is very specific to running, sprinting, athletic movements, so it's a great exercise for functional performance and all that good stuff too, but it's amazing for building the hamstrings. I'm gonna show the stability ball option first. My least favorite option, by the way, because I don't like the ball, it's slippery, I get really sweaty, I'm a sweaty bastard, so I'm always slipping all over the ball, but this is the one that's most accessible and most known to most people. I'll show it on here first. I'm gonna show my favorite option for almost all variations, the slide board option. On the Ultra Slide, you can also use fitness sliders that work on carpet or artificial turf, or furniture sliders on carpet, socks on a wooden floor, paper plates even on carpet. Lots of ways to make it work. I'm gonna also show my favorite option using band resistance and a Glute-Ham Roller from Sorinex. That'll be coming up as well. And then I'll show even a foam roller and a bodyweight option. So by the time you end this video, you'll have so many options at your disposal. First way to do it, right? Layering down the progression. So the key on this, a lot of people do this, and the problem with it is they don't have the ability to fully extend the hips yet. They get cramps, they've got extension at the low back. So you gotta first learn how to properly do the straight-legged hip extension. So you get your lower legs on the ball, you're going to crunch the abs, clench the glutes, pull the ribs and shoulders down, and keep the chin slightly tucked. It might even help for some to actually bring the head up a bit and kind of crunch themselves into position so that they really learn and hack the movement through the hips, not the low back. So this is what we don't want. See that glary and hyperextension of the back? That's where, especially when you start adding the leg curl to it, you're gonna hurt your back. You're not gonna target the glutes and hams the way we want. So I've got myself locked in tight, just gonna come up. It might not even look like I'm going up as high as I would normally. That's okay. You actually are trying to create what's called a posterior pelvic tilt, pulling that navel towards that spine, which really activates the glutes and locks in good core positioning, all right? So that's the first progression here. You gotta be able to do that properly for 10 to 20 reps, or even work on being able to hold that position for up to upwards of a full minute without cramping or losing form and technique and not feeling it in the low back. From there, we do what's called the hip extension plus leg curl. There's a reset involved, kind of building into the movement before we do it continuously. So I come up, squeeze, maintain that full hip extension height the whole way, pull all the way in, squeeze those hammies hard, come back in control, reset and repeat. Up, squeeze, come back. I also don't like this too because it sounds like you're farting, all right? I got enough issues to deal with. I don't need the farting and the sweating while I'm working out. So that's a great option as well. One thing I'll touch on quick before I show the continuous progression that's next is the concept of base of support. So even within any variation, the macro progressions are what I'm showing now, going from level to level. These are micro progressions within the same level. So it's most easy because I have my hands here, the wider base of support. I can make it harder by going just elbows, and then make it even harder by going fingertips on the forehead and taking my arms off the ground. Now there's more of a stability challenge there. But here's that final progression. You hold that hip extension position, and I continuously curl the ball back and forth, all right? Now, a lot of people will do this. This is what I see. Oh, this is what I see a lot. This is nothing. This is no consequence to the hamstrings. You're just fucking around. So you've got to slow this down. In fact, I actually like doing this. Not that I won't do a normal tempo and just go for reps or high reps, but it's really good with what I call a 4-2-1 tempo. So in that case, you're gonna come in, squeeze for 1, 2, come out in 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, the centric overload on that movement takes that bodyweight exercise and makes it feel like a heavy loaded, high tension movement. Also, one of the biggest injuries that people have in athletics, working out period, are hamstring strains. So by teaching your body to slowly, as this plane passes by, to slowly lengthen under load is a great way to bulletproof the hamstrings, protect your back and knees. So that's what I recommend there. These are really good for sets of max reps, sets of 8 to 12 reps, with some of the tempo protocols I had mentioned previously. So that's one option as well. We can also go from 2 legs to 1 leg. So the same progression can kind of happen, but you can also, on one-legged, where we go from one-legged hip extension, one-legged hip extension plus leg curl with a reset and the continuous leg curl. But you can also do it where I go 2 legs in, 1 leg out with that slow eccentric tempo. So I would curl in, and then I pick that leg up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Bring that leg back, pull it in, and I keep repeating that sequence. And I like 5 to 10 second eccentric outward portions of that, ideally, for sets of 5 to 10 reps on each side. By the time you do that, if you can do multiple sets of 5 to 10 reps with 5 to 10 second eccentric portions of that exercise on one leg, you'll be doing high rep, single leg curls without a problem. You'll have no back pain, no knee pain, and really beautiful glutes and hamstrings. So that is the ball option. Again, one thing that's also not advantageous about this is that you can't really go wide. You can't really mess around with your foot placement as much. That's just something to consider. Let me quickly show you some body weight options. Now, this is underrated. The one good thing about the ball is that the higher you are in terms of elevating the feet, you're going to get a little more of that knee flexion, hamstring stimulus going. It's just a unique angle. But you can also take a foam roller. Again, not perfect, but it definitely allows you to access the movement if you are in a pinch, traveling, don't have access to a ball, okay? And there's no farting noises, all right? I'm going to put it right kind of at the high part of my Achilles, lift up, again, crunch the abs, squeeze the glutes, and then I'm going to roll it in, okay? And again, the key on this movement is you got to maintain that hip extension height the entire time as you do it. So if I went like this and I drop my hips, then it's not the hip extension leg curl. In fact, I'm probably just doing more of a leg curl, and that's not the purpose of this movement. So I'm keeping the hips elevated, abs crunched, squeeze it in, bring it out, all right? Now, you can do that also on one leg. Let's just hide this there. The ducks will watch it. We're gonna go hamstring walk out. Now this is another option, pure body weight option, but really good for sets of 2 to 3 minute work periods, longer work periods. It's a slow, stable movement. You can plug it into a circuit or use it as a warm-up or a finisher. I'm going to get into a glute bridge on the heels, toes pull back to the shin, abs crunch tight. I'm gonna slowly, an inch at a time, that's what she said, while keeping my hips up, walk out into I swear to God, we are not at an airport, but for some reason, they're flying over us today. I'm holding that position, and I'm just gonna walk it back, keeping the hips elevated. So again, I've got that full hip extension maintained throughout, but I'm adding those micro steps and working so many different degrees of varied knee flexion to really help strengthen the hamstrings. And one thing I recommend too, in terms of how to plug these leg curls into your workouts, doing sets of, let's 50 to 100 total reps, or 3 sets, let's say of 15 to 20 reps before you start your squats workout is great, because by flooding blood into the hamstrings, it actually gives you more stability and strength at the bottom of the squat for your knees. You can also do leg curls as fillers between sets of heavier squats and squatting style movements. That's one of the great ways that I like to incorporate it. Before I go to the slide board, here is this guy. So join me over here, Naomi. This is basically a Glute-Ham Roller from Sorinex. And what's beautiful about this, you can attach band or cable resistance. I just have it anchored to hip thruster. You can anchor it to anything, a stable power rack, a pole. You can attach the band to those things as well. But the beauty of this is we get peak tension at peak contraction of that knee flexion. Knee flexion pulling it all the way back, heels towards the butt, is when the band resistance is highest. So it's an amazing way to pump up the hamstrings and also progressively overload. I can get further away to get more tension. I can go to thicker bands. So sometimes when I do a hamstring workout, I'll take a thicker purple band and do sets of, let's say, 8 to 12 reps, and then I'll try to pump out 15 to 20 reps with a lighter band as kind of a back off set. So you've got so many ways now. People just end up adding, just like with push-ups, right? People just add endless reps of the same push-up variation, progress to a more challenging variation. That progressive overload is what causes the continuous gain. So I'm coming away from that, and then all I'm gonna do is, again, hip extension, abs crunch tight, pull in, and then right there, squeeze. So much resistance right there. And I'll tell you what, this for high reps is one of the best hamstring pumps you'll ever experience. if you have trouble feeling your hamstrings, you won't after doing this exercise, especially if you do it right and layer it appropriately. And you can do the same thing on one leg. You can have a lot of fun with this exercise. Now, let's go to the slide board. So, Naomi, join me over here. This is my favorite option. Again, you can use the fitness sliders. I don't want to hear the excuses. I don't have a slide board, it's so expensive. There's a reason why you buy equipment. There are some training tools that are just unmatched. I've shown substitutes, alternatives, more equipment-free options, but the reason these tools are made is they enhance movement patterns and let us get a better training effect. So ideally, you might not have access to this stuff right away, but you will, as you go on your fitness journey, prioritize it more, save up for it more. Before you know it, you're in the fucking Garden of Gains. This is my backyard. Like this, look how much, look at that disco ball we just added too. There's a lot of accoutrement on the way. But what you do here is you put on these booties, and what I like about the slide board, it allows for a more faster rhythmic tempo. It's great for that metabolic stress high rep pump technique. Also, you get friction from the surface, and it's really smooth. It feels so good on this. And I can do my two-legged and one-legged options. You can also do things like this where you bridge up and kind of do the alternating leg. That's kind of a tweener between the two-legged and one-legged option. And again, just so smooth. Again, keeping the hips up and really rocking it out. Now, if you have, this is one little tip. If you have access, you always want to put this on a flat, completely flat surface. Uneven surface can damage the board, but if you have the ability to use an incline ramp, you can place it on a slight incline ramp, and then it gets really hard to actually come back up. But what I mean in terms of elevating it this way. So if I place it on an incline ramp like this, and I was coming upwards, now I've got more gravitational, the body angle has been adjusted to make my body weight, the same load, feel more challenging. So that's one thing I like to mess around with when I can have access to that. But the single leg option on this, I think, is the smoothest. You keep the knee tucked tight to the chest to engage the core and hip flexors, and then I just come in and out, squeezing through. And again, this one is just amazing for that overall glute ham development. So hip extension, leg curl, getting both hip extension and knee flexion for total hamstring development. It's also really important for people that have a history of knee pain, front knee pain in particular, or back pain. If you're very quad dominant, have trouble hinging at the hips, deadlifts bother you, and you notice you're missing that hamstring development, this is the money exercise to incorporate. I recommend a couple times a week minimum, at least 2 to 3 sets of 8 to 12 plus reps of one of these variations, mixing into your routine, add it as a filler on squats, add it as a warm-up or a finisher. Again, when you have lagging hamstrings, they need to be prioritized. You can train them more often. So, and this exercise will not cause, unless you're doing the really slow eccentric versions of the movement, that slow tempo, it's not going to cause as much muscle damage as, say, like heavy deadlifts. It also doesn't really load your spine much, and it won't overload your central nervous system too much, so you can do it more frequently. So please get familiar with this exercise. Your hamstring, look at this. It's not a tumor. Tell you what, I've had a history of knee pain. I had 4 knee surgeries by the time I was 22, and one of the ways that I've managed to get back to full strength and work through those issues were really developing strong glutes and hamstrings. They really support the knees and the back. Get familiar with it, get those hamstrings going, turn those hammies into ham hocks. I love you guys. Check out thedailybj.com for my monthly programs, podcasts, meal prep videos, and my podcast, the Weekly BJ Podcast on iTunes and all other podcast outlets for that. Love you guys. Peace.